Well, guys, here's our objective for today. So today we're going to be explaining the different information that can be presented from first person and third person point of views. So what information can we get if it's told in first person? What information can we get if it's told in third person? So remember that stories are usually written from either first or third person point of view. In first person, the narrator tells the story from his or her personal point of view. The narrator can't know what's going on with other characters, their thoughts or their feelings. They can only see events from their point of view. They can't tell us something that they haven't seen themselves. Third person point of view usually provides a broader look at the events and characters. We get to know more of what's going on in the actual world. So we're going to look at this prompt right here, and we're going to use this advantages and disadvantages chart. So it says, reread paragraphs 10 to 20 to determine the advantages and disadvantages of third person point of view in quiet. As you annotate, make notes in the margins about what details the third person narrator is able to include and what they leave out. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill this chart out, and we're going to refer back to this prompt as we read. So what's the advantages and disadvantages of first person versus or third person versus advantages of third person? So let's read through. It began on a blustery, sour October day. The mistress had crossed the lake to the village, and in her canoe, with Lad curled up in a furry heap on the prow. On the return trip, about 50 yards from shore, the canoe struck sharply and obliquely against a half-submerged log that a fall freshet had swept down from the river above the lake. At the same moment, a flaw of wind caught the canoe's quarters, and, after the manner of such eccentric craft, the canvas shell proceeded to turn turtle. Into the ice-chill water splashed his two occupants. Lad bobbed to the top and glanced around at the mistress to learn if this was a new practical joke. But instantly he saw it was no joke at all, so far as she was concerned. Swathed and cramped by the folds of her heavy outing skirt, the mistress was making no progress shoreward. And the dog flung himself through the water toward her with a rush that left his shoulders and half his back above the surface. In a second he had reached her and had caught her sweater shoulder in his teeth. So, right here, I really don't know what's going on with the mistress. In third person, I don't know what's going on with the mistress and her thoughts about this canoe being capsized. Period. She had the presence of mind to lie out straight, as though she were floating, to fill her lungs with a swift intake of breath. Now, if this was told just from first person point of view of like the mistress, then we wouldn't know what the dog was doing right now, because she would be so concerned with herself almost drowning that she wouldn't know that the dog was thinking about rescuing her. If this had been told in first person with the mistress's point of view, we wouldn't know what was going on with Lad and that he's getting ready to rescue her, period. So let's keep reading. Paragraph 14. The dog's burden was thus made infinitely lighter than if she had struggled or had lain in a posture less easy for towing. Yet he made scant headway, until she wound one hand in his mane, and, still lying motionless and stiff, bade her loose his hold on her shoulder. In this way, by sustained effort that wrenched every giant muscle in the collie's body, they came at last to land. Vastly rejoiced was Lad, and inordinately proud of himself, and the plaudits of the master and the mistress were music to him. Indefiably, he understood he had done a very wonderful thing, and that everybody at the place was talking about him, and that they were all trying to pet him at once. Matters soon quieted down, and the incident seemed to end. Instead, it had just begun, for within an hour the mistress, who for days had been sick with the cold, was stricken with the chill, and by night she was in the first stages of pneumonia. Then over the place descended gloom, a gloom Lad could not understand until he went upstairs at dinner time to escort the mistress, as usual, to the dining room. But to his light scratch at the door there was no reply. He scratched again, and presently master came out, and the room ordered him downstairs again. Then from the master's voice and look, Lad understood that something was terribly amiss. Also, as she did not appear at dinner, and as he was for the first time in his life forbidden to go into her room, he knew the mistress was the victim of whatever mishap had befallen. So what have I noticed in here? Well, since it being third person, I get a lot more perspectives and a lot more ideas about what can go on in the story. Because I'm not just limited to Lad, but I also see some things that go on with the master and some things that go on with the mistress. So the reader knows things let me start over. The reader knows things that we wouldn't know if the story was told in first person by Lad. For example, the mistress has pneumonia. If it was told by Lad the dog, then guess what? The dog wouldn't know that it's called pneumonia, and we would just know that she was sick and not really her normal self. But because it's third person, we know exactly what's going on. It's that pneumonia part. Now, the disadvantage, we already talked a little bit about the mistress, where we don't know exactly what she's thinking or doing when the whole boat gets capsized. But there's also the idea of we don't know what's happening to Lad either. The reader doesn't know the thoughts and feelings of Lad at all times. For example, we don't know much about what he is feeling and thinking as he rescues the mistress from the water. It's just giving us more of a playback of what's going on, like a recount. Now, was there anything else that you noticed in there? Well, let's think about this for a moment. From a third-person point of view, we're able to learn things that Lad does not know. For example, we know the mistress has pneumonia, which Lad does understand. If we were viewing the story from first-person point of view inside Lad's mind, we wouldn't know this detail because Lad doesn't know what's wrong with mistress, which we already got that here. Now, on the other hand, since we're not inside Lad's mind, it has its own disadvantages as well. So we're not told about much what Lad is thinking and feeling during this exciting scene when he rescues the mistress. First-person point of view with Lad narrating would have allowed us to know those things. Now, what else could we pick out from that part? Well, again, we have, since it's in third-person point of view, and not being told by Lad, we have some other things that we have been able to figure out. So where is it? Where's our pneumonia part? Right here. It says, for within an hour the mistress, who has been half sick with the cold, was stricken with the chill. So it's telling us the mistress was even sick before this began, before this whole adventure began. Now, since it says she's half sick, we probably wouldn't know that as Lad, because remember it says this is the first time that he's not been allowed to be near her. So that's another advantage of this third person, is that we get more information on why she got sick. It wasn't just because she fell in the water. She's already sick before. Another thing that we know, being in third person point of view, is that the mistress was already sick before she fell into the water. So this probably made it worse in how she got pneumonia, period. And then I'm going to put what paragraph that was from. That was from paragraph 16. I'm sorry, that was paragraph 17. The same thing was this one right here. Now, what are some disadvantages again? Well, we don't know Lad's thoughts and feelings as we rescue her. We could kind of get his feelings about what's going on with the mistress while she's locked in her room. It sounds like he's sad about it, but we have that thumped hopefully on the hall floor. But we don't get a whole bunch of information about it. We also, since it's told from this third person point of view, we also don't really get more information about this part with him and the people paid him. Because remember, he doesn't really like pets, but because he just did something well, it just says, he liked it. Vastly rejoiced was Lad and proud of himself. So applauded to the master and mistress for music to him. So he's saying those congratulations were wonderful to him. But if it was first person, we'd hear more information about how happy he was to save the mistress. So another disadvantage of it not being a first person point of view from Lad's perspective is that we don't get to know more about how happy he was to save the mistress. Oops. is that we don't get to know how happy or rejoiced he was for saving the mistress, period. That key word is how, because it just says he was happy. But imagine if you save someone's life, you're going to be overjoyed. So remember, when you're telling a story in first person, you get to put more thoughts, more feelings of one character in. Whereas if you're narrating third person, you can include more broadly other thoughts and feelings, but it won't focus on just one like it would in first person. All right, that's it for this lesson of analyzing a third person point of view. So we have another story, and it's about a dog, because we apparently like reading lots of stories about dogs and how they make the world a better, happier place. So we're going to be working on our word study for this lesson. And remember, what we did before was we talked about the vowel, consonant, silent E pattern. So we had words like hate, where that A is what? That A is a long vowel sound. And why does it make that long vowel sound? Well, it's because of that E making that A sound. We can add suffixes to it like hated, but it's still that vowel, consonant, silent E pattern. We also had words like gravely, where we have that same thing. We have this suffix at the end that we added. So when we take that suffix off, that ending, we have that vowel, consonant, silent E, and that E makes it say that long vowel sound. So we're going to be practicing, more about the vowel, consonant, silent E pattern as we look through this story called Balto, a Heroic Dog. So as we read it, I want to see if I can find more vowel, consonant, silent E patterns and see if I can figure out what they might mean based on our text if we're unfamiliar with them. So I have my yellow highlighter ready to go. And let's begin with paragraph 1. In January 1925, some children, so notice it's some, we're not going to highlight because we don't say some. It doesn't make a long O sound, so this is just an oddball. Some children in Nome, Alaska, developed a life-threatening disease called diphtheria. There's only one medicine, a serum, that could save them, and it can only be found 1,000 miles away in Anchorage. Now, in this sentence, if I read the word save without the long A sound, I would mispronounce it. I'd say salve. And I've never heard of the word salve before, so then I'd miss the meaning of it. So if I try that long E sound, like I see because it follows that vowel, consonant, silent E pattern, I hear save, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Why does it make sense? Well, remember, it's saying they had a disease and there's a medicine, and so I know that that medicine might help them. Another word for help would be save. So I know that we need a cure in order to save these sick children. So I'm going to pay attention to that syllable pattern as I keep reading. So let's continue. As I go, I'm going to highlight those words. The serum was carefully packaged and sent by train to the last stop on the line. It still needed to travel the remaining 674 miles to Nome. Weather conditions prevented the serum going the rest of the way by ship or air. It was decided that the only option was a relay of dog sled teams. The trip ordinarily took 13 days. Wow. So the only way we could get that medicine up to these people wasn't by a bus, train, car. It had to be by dogs, by this dog sled team. The first musher, or driver, and his team raced with the serum towards Nome. Now I'm not going to highlight Nome because I have it up here. It was the middle of winter, with temperatures as low as 40 degrees below zero. Woo. The winds were sometimes, I have some, which we talked about wasn't, but I do have times up here. So that times has that silent E. Strong enough to knock over both the dogs and the sleds. Nevertheless, the teams kept going, each one handing the precious package off to the next team. On February 1st, the package was handed off to the musher Gunnar Kisson for the last leg of the journey. His team, led by a Siberian husky named Balto, set off to cover the final miles to Nome. Blinding blizzard blew up, and made it impossible for Kisson to navigate. He feared he'd never reach Nome. However, Balto knew the trail. By following his instincts, he bravely led the team onward, despite, that's a nice one, the hazardous storm. 20 hours later, they staggered into Nome. The had arrived safely. Ooh, there's 2 in a row. And in the final 5 days. So these dogs barely made it. They had 5 days to spare. So, what do we have? Well, we have all of these words that I'm now going to sort into their categories. So let's start at the top. We're going to look for those long A's that I found. So my first one I have was save. So let me make it bigger for us so we can see it better. Okay. And then, what other long A's do I have? I have save. Ooh, I have raced, raced. And remember, even though it has that D on the end, if I take the D off, it's a long A sound. What else do I have? I have navigate down here. Then what others do I have? We have navigate. Ooh, bravely, remember? Again, I take that suffix off, and now I have that pattern of that silent E at the end, which tells me it's probably a long vowel sound. And we have, if we keep going, we have later, and we have safely. So let's add those on. Later, again, take that suffix off, and now I see that vowel consonant silent E pattern. And we have safely, which also has that suffix. So if I take it off, I notice safe has that long A sound because it follows our pattern. Now if I look, I don't think I saw any long E's. So long E is going to be an empty section. Now what about our long I? Well, this one I found quite a bit also, like those A's. I found line. I found miles. I found driver, which again has that suffix. When I take that R off, I have drive. And I found sometimes, which is a long one. So I'm going to put that at the end, just so it doesn't blow into the O's that I'll have. And what else did I find? I found, ooh, despite. I forgot that one. And 5 at the end. Now, and oof, arrived. I lied. I didn't have all of them. Now, are there any that you saw that I missed? So there is hidden in here, there is 2 more. I'm sorry, there is 1 more. There is this word, life. So if you found that while we were reading, excellent job, because I did not highlight that one for you, but it is hidden in here. So now let's head to long O. Our long O, I did actually have very many for our long O. So the only one I found, and I don't think there's any more that I missed, was gnome. So now we're on our last one. We're on what? We are on our long U. And our long U, I didn't see any. If you did, then you did a better job reading it than I did looking for those patterns. So now let's just briefly go over what happened in this story. Who is telling the story in Balto? Is it first person or third? Is there even a narrator? Now this is more like an informational, but it is still a third person narration. It's not first because it's referring to like his in Balto. We don't see the word I in there, but we see words that tell us what's going on. So this is a third person point of view. Now, are there any descriptive or sensory words that are in here to help us get an idea what's going on in the story? Yeah, we have this part right here that talks about how cold it was, remember? With temperatures as low as 40 degrees below zero. The winds were sometimes strong enough to knock over the dogs and the sleds. So they're really giving us some description of what's going on. And with this description, they're really creating a tone of dread, a tone of, hey, this is kind of dangerous. And why is that? Well, not only are the winds and the temperature so drastically perilous, but we also have what? We have at the very beginning, remember, they're trying to deliver medicine to save some people, to save the children in Nome. So the tone is kind of suspenseful. It's kind of dreadful. So you have now heard the story of Balto. There is also a video clip that you can click on if you want to watch a little bit about Balto because they've made a lot lots of movies about it. And so if you'd like to, it's over on the side as well. Good job, you guys, and we'll look at this in our next video. So here it is, the day where we're going to actually start planning out our writing. So we've done a lot of looking at and putting together facts and information, but today we're going to actually organize our paper. So this is our objective for this lesson. I'll be able to develop reasons for my opinion based on a text and gather facts and details from a text to support my reasons. Now remember, in our previous lessons, we identified these facts and details from the stories that you chose, and we're going to use them to support our opinions. So today we're going to show you how to plan and organize your opinion using that evidence from the text. So we have our prompt, if you remember, right over here. In your readings, you've encountered two different narrative points of view, first person, third person. Which style do you think is a more effective way of telling a story? State your opinion in an essay and provide reasons that are supported by details from two of the following readings: Here Boy, Waiting for Stormy, A Dog's Life, and Quiet. So, what are we going to do with all this information? Because that's a lot to take in. Well, we are going to organize it, and we're going to use this chart to fill out our thoughts. So we're going to put our reasons down, why we think that, and don't forget our opinion. We need to say which one we think is better. So I want you to look closely at this prompt again. And the prompt asks me to state my opinion about which animal is easier to picture in my mind. So, which one did you pick yesterday? Is it... Oh. Oops, I picked the wrong one for you guys. I'm sorry. I was going to model with our mentor writing prompt. And I was displaying the one you guys will be writing to. So this is how we're going to organize it, but you guys will be organizing using the student writing prompt. So remember, the one that we looked at the very beginning, the example, the mentor, is which animal is easier to picture in mind? The dog in Here Boy or Misty and Waiting for Stormy? So state your opinion in an essay and provide reasons that are supported by the details. So remember, this was my essay, but how did I get this? Well, I got it because I organized it first. So I used this chart, and I remember I had to think which animal was easier to visualize, the dog or the horse. And so when I looked at all my notes from my planning guide that I filled out, I remember, oh yeah, I thought the dog was easier to visualize. So that's one of my reasons. So one of my reasons was, that was my opinion essay, my opinion statement. My opinion was the dog in Here Boy is easier to visualize. And I'm going to give those reasons and evidence to support that. So the dog in Here Boy is easier to picture than the horse in Stormy. So remember, I'm going to do my own opinion statement, and then I need to have reasons to back that up. So what was one reason? Well, if you remember from either looking back at the mentor text or looking back in our video, you remember I said it was easier because the appearance of the dog is described. They don't describe Misty for us. All we have is that picture. So the appearance of the dog in Here Boy is clearly described. They say what he looked like, and we didn't have to just rely on that picture for us. Now, what were my facts and details that supported this? Because you could say, Mr. Wimberly, it didn't describe the dog. And I can easily say, yes, it did. This is where it described it. He was a big dog and ugly. His tongue was hanging out, and he was wagging my tail, which is more description than we got for all of Misty. So again, we'll make that bigger so we can see it all. Oops, that might have been too big. There we go. And then, so that's one reason, but remember, I need to have two reasons. So my other reason that I had was the narrator of Here Boy describes many of the dog's action with specific, exciting language. Remember, the horse, the author didn't really describe it that well. It was like the horse is licking saw. Ooh, that's exciting. But here in the story, he gives us lots of description what he's doing. He skidded to a stop and smiled at me. So I really like that. He didn't just say he was running, but I really like that word skidded because it shows me that he was eager to stop and please this person. He's eager to stop and please Opal. So it really helps me get that picture in my mind. So you guys are going to be doing the same thing with your student writing prompt. You're going to be telling me, with these questions that are coming up, what is your opinion statement? What is your reasons and your supporting facts and details? remember, if you're stuck, think about which one you picked was more effective and why. So your opinion statement might be first person is more effective because we know the thoughts of a character. Or you might say for your opinion statement, third person is more effective because we can see more of what's going on. But they'll need to give me those reasons and let me know your details to back it up. Remember, your opinion statement, you need to have what? You need to have your two reasons built in. So remember here I talked about in my opinion statement why I think it's user picture. I talk about the appearance. That was my first reason. And then I talk about how the actions are more clearly described for the second reason why I picked the dog. And then notice that's what my second reason was up here.